when you are coming from where I have been in the past, from that small to medium business, you can often listen to presentations and think, hold on a minute, I'm just concerned about the 20 support tickets I've got on my help desk and trying to upgrade my SharePoint server from one version to the next. But I think with the change that is happening in the industry, as Joe discussed, we need to stop and think how we're going to change what we're doing. And starting with the user is that fantastic way to be doing this. And we can all take something away from those elements that Joe was mentioning. What I wanted to change tracks, well, not almost change tracks, to talk to you about now is where are we starting with this today? What is actually happening inside your data center? Can I have a show of hands? Who uses vSphere in their data center here? Fantastic. Near enough every single person in this room. The rest of you, I'm sure we can convert you. Or maybe we don't need to, going back to Joe's presentation. So we're going to be having a look at the software-defined data center stack. I wanted to bring up one of the slides that Joe brought up on screen about any device on any application on any cloud. I saw this for the first time at VMworld out in Barcelona last year, and there was a lot of mocking of this statement around the any cloud element, because at the time there was only vCloud Air really. And a lot of people were saying, well, it's any cloud as long as it's VMware's cloud, and how does that work going forward? And myself, somebody that's setting technical strategy for our business, and I'm discussing with my customers, I was a little bit worried about VMware's strategy moving forward when it came to the public cloud. Because as good as vCloud Air is, it was quite a short-sighted plan if that was their only strategy going forward. We saw that AWS is the leader in this space. We saw that a lot of people were moving to Azure. And what VMware really needed to do was be the company that allowed you to bridge all of those clouds together, almost become the hypervisor of the cloud. And with the cross-cloud services that VMware has been talking about and Cloud Foundation, that's what we're starting to see come to fruition. Now, what I wanted to focus on was the software-defined data center. I think for most of you in the business, this is where you are today. You're starting to look at cloud technologies. You're probably adopting Office 365. Maybe you're looking at ways to move your workloads out to the cloud. Things like backup and DR as a service are fantastic services to start looking at in your adoption to the cloud. And you should be preparing your cloud strategy. Whether you don't believe that it's right for you today or not, your business will somehow, some way, be taking you to the cloud if you don't plan it. So let's start with the software-defined data center. Ultimately, what we want to do is simplify what is in your server room to allow you to concentrate on the things that matter, the user. Now, the first piece that I'm going to focus on is vSphere 6.5. vSphere 6.5 was announced at Barcelona in October, and it was actually launched, ready for download, at about 10 p.m. last night. So any of you can go away, you can download this and consider that for your data center. My personal recommendation, it's gone through a long beta testing, but it's good for testing in your data center now, and around 2 to 3 months, we'll be advising our customers on how to get up to 6.5. Now, there's 3 main areas that vSphere 6.5 will help you address. One is simplification. The second is security. And the third one is any application. Joe was talking about containers. Now, a lot of larger organizations, a lot of developers are starting to use containers as the way that they are building their applications. And something that Joe mentioned at a presentation I went to a couple of weeks ago is he predicts within the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to start seeing containers affecting our daily lives. So we need to have a platform that is going to allow us to adopt those as seamlessly and easily as possible. So if we start with the simplification, they have completely, they've reviewed the way that vCenter works inside your organization. So those of you that are running vCenter, hands up if you're running it on a Windows virtual machine. Hands up if you're running it on a Linux virtual machine. And hands up if you haven't got a clue, it just works. What we have seen is this Linux virtual appliance has been introduced and has been gaining traction over the years. We saw it get feature parity, and we saw it able to scale as big as the Windows vCenter many years ago. But there has always been the last few things that have stopped us getting from that Windows vCenter over to a Linux-based virtual appliance. One of those was the ability to easily migrate from a Windows vCenter into a Linux vCenter, and that's one of the things that has been sorted with this release. VMware's vision, no doubtedly, is in the future, the Linux appliance vCenter is the way that your organization will work. We also have got VMware Update Manager now fully integrated inside that Linux virtual appliance. So previously, even if you'd gone with the Linux virtual appliance, you then had to deploy a Windows server to install Update Manager. So you were still managing probably more virtual machines than you would have done if you were just with a Windows vCenter. So Update Manager is now included in that, and that gives you all the features that you would know and expect, but it's simple. You don't have to run out a separate SQL database to run it. You can use the inbuilt Postgres database, it is, I think, inside the vCenter, and it will manage downloads for you. It has built-in high availability. It is able to be configured in such a way where you're able to have a witness and a standby cloned from the vCenter appliance that you've originally deployed to give you ultimate flexibility and reliability around the vCenter with about a 5-minute RTO. So as far as I am concerned, those of you that are looking to upgrade to vSphere 6.5, we'll be having a conversation with you about migrating onto this Linux virtual appliance. Those of you that are using vSphere 5 and below today, and I know that is a large percent of you, if I go back to what I was mentioning about this state of industry survey we're doing, I know about 20% of you that have already, from the 20% of you that have already responded, it was about 80–90% still on vSphere 6. So you're looking to do that upgrade up to vSphere 6, and that's probably what I would recommend as the first stepping stone. We'll probably continue to do that with your Windows Virtual Center, and then the next upgrade to 6.5, we'll use these fantastic migration tools to then get you onto the Linux virtual appliance. It has some other improvements in it. We have an improved management console that allows you to manage the Linux virtual appliance. It has native backup functionality inside of it, allowing you to back up the whole appliance and individual files for restore. On screen there just outlines how you're going to install the Update Manager components based upon whether you choose to go for that Linux one or whether you choose to go for the Windows-based one. If you go for the Windows-based appliance, then you have to still have the Windows-based Update Manager. If you have the Linux one, it's all nice and integrated. We now have 5 management interfaces. I don't think that's a particularly good thing, but hopefully that's something that VMware are working on, and I know they are working on, in terms of streamlining this. Hands up those of you that like the current web-based user interface for vSphere. VMware know this. So it's built on, is it Adobe Flex, I believe it is. We've been trying to move people from the C client into the web-based client for some time. It's maybe not as intuitive as it needed to have been. It's maybe not as fast as it needed to be. In this latest release, that web-based client, the Flex client, has had improvements. Things like when you go into it, the kind of data center view that shows you your virtual machines is the first screen that you see. So you no longer have to click through 3 screens to get to there when you want to, where you want to be managing your environment. But ultimately, where VMware are taking this is a HTML5 interface. We've seen that been available for a Fling, which is VMware's kind of test bed for new products they want to bring out for a number of months now. And with this release, we do have the HTML5 client, which is called the vSphere client, available. For 9 out of 10 tasks you want to do on a daily basis, this is going to allow you to do that. It's quick, it's easy, it looks like that, it's a lot fresher. Speak to Joe or someone at VMware, they're using new design standards for their user interface that is going to be used across the board for all of their products. It's really, really exciting. I think it takes it back to a client that we actually want to use that makes it a lot easier for us to manage. We also have things like updates to the host client. So instead of using that C client to still manage the host directly, there's now a dedicated HTML5 client to connect to the host. So we're seeing it become a lot more simplified. Security is a really big concern for everybody. And if it isn't a concern for you in this room, make it a concern. We are seeing an increasing amount of our customers calling in, asking for help recovering from ransomware attacks. It is happening. It isn't just the largest organizations. We all need to stop, and as well as starting with the users, look at how we're delivering security to our business. There's 3 key features inside vSphere 6.5 that are included. I wanted to concentrate on one of those, and that was the encryption. But we also have things like enterprise quality audit logs. So if you're using a syslog server, you can actually see what is going on in the syslog server, who configured what, when it was done, the times. We've got full ownership from a logging perspective. From an encryption basis, what we're talking about here is the software-defined data center. So whilst it will integrate with the CPU encryption algorithms that are available on your host hardware that you're using, we are setting policies on a per virtual machine basis that allow you to choose to encrypt individual virtual machines inside your environment, or a number of virtual machines. You don't need to put anything in the guest like other encryption tools would be used. This is integrated with the hypervisor. So in terms of performance hit, this is going to be negligible and the easiest way for you to introduce encryption into your virtual machines. For any VM that has been encrypted in such a way, it will also be encrypted using vMotion. So when it's going between one host to another host, it will be encrypted. And we are also able to optionally choose to encrypt all virtual machines or any other number of virtual machines, even if they're not encrypted on the storage, during vMotion as well. So that's a really good enhancement that some of you in the room have asked me about before. HA and DRS is functionality that probably the majority of us use, the high availability and the dynamic resource scheduler. We've seen a number of improvements in vSphere 6.5 that make this more functional than ever before. One of those that was of most interest to me was the orchestrated restart and the proactive HA. So this is when your environment has gone down, when VMware is doing its thing and recovering your virtual machines on another host, it is able to make sure that the virtual machines are booted in the correct order based upon the rules that you set up. So if you have a multi-tier application, a front end and a back end, maybe a logging server, maybe some of those other reliances, we can make sure that VMware knows about that. And importantly, we're not just waiting for the VM to start and then starting the next one. We can wait for feedback from an application if you've got it considered as such, heartbeat from the VMware tools. So we know that our infrastructure is going to be starting up in the right order. Proactive HA is also where I believe it can make a considerable difference in your data center when it needs to. So consider you have a memory fault in the server. Consider we have a power supply that's just failed in the server. From a VMware perspective until now, it would report that, but HA wouldn't act upon it. What we're able to do in 6.5 is proactively put that host into a quarantine mode. So whilst if that host is required and it's going to give you business problems if that host can't be online, it will not do anything. But likely you've configured your infrastructure for N+1, so you can have a single host failure. So it will put that host in a quarantine mode. If another host fails, it will come back online because it can still run, but it's at risk from further failure. So HA is getting more intelligent than ever before. We're also, from a DRS perspective, from the automated load balancing perspective, we're taking much more into consideration now to make sure your VMs are placed in the right place. One of those is now looking at the network traffic at a host NIC level to make sure not just memory and CPU are being balanced across all hosts, but the network traffic that is running on those hosts is also taken into consideration. And the really exciting one for me is when we team this up with vRealize Operations. So vRealize Operations is the monitoring product that allows you to use analytics to understand the peaks and troughs of your infrastructure. It knows when CPU is going to hit 100%. It knows when disk latency is going to be increased because it is always learning. It uses that information that it knows to proactively move virtual machines to other hosts before that spike comes in. So it is more intelligent than ever before. We also have vSphere integrated containers. I'm not going to go into a great detail because Joe did cover, but for all intensive purposes, what this allows is if you have developers in your organizations that are wanting to build applications based upon containers, they can do what they know and love. They can use Docker to build their applications, to manage those applications. But you as IT administrators can use the tools that you know and love around vSphere to manage them. It gives you that ultimate flexibility between the two. Hands up who uses vRealize Operations here today. It's only a small amount. So I'd highly recommend that those of you that don't have it, download the trial, speak to one of us and understand what it can do. It's really one of the most intelligent monitoring platforms that doesn't just simply bombard you with emails to tell you that your CPU's gone 100%. I don't care. I need to know if I've got a problem and where the problem is. And that's where vRealize is really aimed to be. We've got a number of new dashboards that aim to get you to the root cause of the problem quicker than ever before. This is the new home screen, and from here I can see exactly, nothing because I clicked the wrong button, I can see exactly where the problems are in my infrastructure. Down the bottom here, I can see actually what I need to do to remediate the problems in my data center. So it's saying you need to add more CPU capacity to this virtual machine. You need to add more RAM to this virtual machine. You need to increase the disk size. And not only will it tell you what you need to do, it will offer to carry out that remediation action for you, allowing you to simplify what you are doing in your data center more than we've ever been able to do before. This is a really good overview about what's going on inside your infrastructure. It gives you the top 10 results. If I look here, we've got top 15 virtual machines experience CPU contention. We've got top 15 virtual machines experience disk latency. And if we go back to what Joe was saying, starting with the user, this probably allows you to get to the root cause of the user's problems with your infrastructure quicker than ever before. If the user is experiencing poor performance, well, is it their machine first of all? But likely, you've got disk latency. You've got a problem with the machine going slow on the back end. You don't have to guess anymore. This will tell you what is going on. So where are we? When we did the survey, those of you that have responded so far, a lot of you were on vSphere 5.1 and 5.5 today. 5.5 is now end of general support. 5.5 is going out in 2018. My recommendation to everyone in this room is you should be going up to vSphere 6. And considering vSphere 6.5 at some point next year. It's time to upgrade, time to get you on those latest release. There's been a lot of updates available, there's been a lot of bug fixes available, there's a lot of features that if you're in support and maintenance, there's going to be no cost from a licensing perspective for you to get up to it. How am I doing with time, someone?
2 minutes.
Thank you. Right, very quickly then. NSX. So Joe did mention NSX. What is NSX? So if we have a look at what we've done in our data center so far, we have virtualized the compute. It allows us to have this transparent layer that our virtual machines are able to run on without having to be tied to the underlying physical hardware. However, as Joe mentioned, the network is still hardware defined. So we configure a free tier application. On top of that free tier application, we then have to go and configure physical load balancers. We have to configure physical firewall rules. We have to configure switch ports, which VLANs they're in, which access control lists they're in. Whilst the VM might take us 2-3 minutes to roll out from a template, it's likely that the network configuration is going to take you many days, or simply you do not secure it in the way that you should. So what happens when we introduce NSX into the picture? So we have our compute layer, we have our virtualization layer. And that is what we've got in our data centers today. So this is vSphere. If we then start bringing on the network hypervisor, so this is NSX, this sits seamlessly on top of your virtual infrastructure. It will work with the existing switching inside your data center. You do not have to go and refresh your whole core network to work with NSX. Each of your workloads is able to have its own virtual networking components, load balancers, routers, and also firewalls, all ingrained with it. And if we think of where this is going in the long term, Joe mentioned being able to vMotion a virtual machine from on-premise to the cloud. Well, that's all well and good. But if all of my network settings are on my physical switch and my physical load balancer and my physical firewall, when you vMotion that workload into the cloud, none of that stuff's there anymore. It's still on-premise, and you've now got to configure it all from scratch in the cloud. That doesn't work. By doing it with NSX at this hypervisor layer, it allows us to attach it to that workload so it can move between your data centers or between on-premise and cloud infrastructures. NSX is being used for 3 primary use cases. The first is security, which I'll come to in a moment. The second is automation. So if you do regularly roll out workloads, we're able to automate the provision of those workloads, the security, the load balancing, the routing, etc. The third one is application continuity. If you are moving workloads from a primary data center to a secondary data center for disaster recovery purposes, the likelihood is you have to re-IP virtual machines from A to B. You might be using something like SRM. With NSX, we can seamlessly allow you to connect the LAN that was in use at the primary site, at the DR site, without having to do any complicated network reconfiguration. So if we have a look at a security, how security is configured today, the problem that we have is we only have a firewall on the edge. Ed Hoppett, if you were here last year, described it as the egg, that we've got this hard outer shell and we've got this soft, gooey mess in between. So once somebody has got into your network, they're free to roam and go wherever they want to go. We need to change this. We need to introduce security inside of our network. So the ways that we would do that in the physical world, we'd maybe put firewalls between every one of our workloads. Whilst some of the firewall manufacturers may love us to do that, that is going to be a nightmare to manage in the physical world. You simply wouldn't be able to A, afford it, or B, be able to do it from a complexity sake. That's where NSX comes in. We're able to manage it from a single pane point, from a single pane of glass. We're able to seamlessly configure the rules for the workloads, and it's attached to that virtual machine. So effectively, each of our workloads can have their own firewall surrounding them to allow you to have, I suppose, the eggs within inside the eggs. I keep on thinking of like a bag of mini eggs instead of a great big soft-boiled egg. So if you would like to look at NSX, have a chat with one of our technical staff here. There are all kinds of different use cases, and it ultimately comes down to how you need to secure your environment and how much risk you are willing to take of a breach coming in. And imagine a ransomware attack coming into one server and going over multiple servers. Imagine you cannot get to your data because it's been encrypted. How much would that cost your business? Well, maybe we can do something now to limit that happening. The final piece that we will be talking about on the software-defined data center is vSAN. We have somebody from Dell coming up. We've got Mark Shaw from Dell coming up, who will be doing you a presentation later on vSAN, so I'm going to leave that for now. So what I wanted to do now is change the track of the presentation and really go and focus on the user, because as Joe said, that's where we need to start. I've got a gentleman called Simon Townsend from AppSense. He's CTO for AppSense that will be coming up on stage, and he will be telling you why now is the reason more than ever to be considering workspace transformation. Can I ask Simon to come up on the stage?